Hey everyone, and welcome. If you're prepping for your DDA or GATE exams, or you're just really into urban planning, you're in the right place. Today, we're breaking down the official 2026 housing policies that are literally about to change how India builds homes. So, let's dive right in.
Just think about that for a second. That question, it's the core idea behind this whole 2026 blueprint. We're shifting away from just thinking about housing as, four walls and a roof. The new philosophy is all about creating living spaces that actually respond to us, that are inclusive, and that are built for the amazing diversity of people.
All right, so here's our game plan. We're going to start with the big picture, the new blueprint. Then we'll zoom right into designing for every single person. After that, we'll explore how we build for different climates, engineer homes that are built to last, and finally, we'll wrap it all up with the key takeaways you absolutely have to know. It's kind of like a journey from people to the planet.
First up, housing's new blueprint. Look, the 2026 policies aren't just an update, they're a complete rethink. They treat housing as this whole integrated system that has to be inclusive for everyone, adaptive to the world around it, and tough enough to face future challenges.
And that leads us perfectly into our second section, which is honestly maybe the most important one, designing for every person. This is where the policy stuff gets personal. We're talking about how these new rules are creating homes that actually work for the elderly, for people with disabilities, for students, and for young professionals starting out. So the big idea driving all of this is something called universal design. And it's not about adding a few special features here and there. No, it's about creating seamless access for everybody. The whole goal is to build what the policy calls a continuous loop of access, making sure that anyone, especially the Divyangjan and the elderly, can get from the street all the way to their front door without hitting a single barrier. And, this isn't just about physical stuff. It's also about making it financially possible. Under new DDA schemes, Divyangjan applicants get this higher purchase option. And here's the bit you really need for your exams. They only have to pay 25% of the cost upfront. That's a massive drop from the old 75%. Plus, they're guaranteed a spot on the ground floor or right near a lift. That's a huge deal. Okay, pop quiz time. What's that specific financial incentive for Divyangjan applicants? Is it A, a 50% discount, B, paying only 25% upfront on a higher purchase basis, C, free electricity, or D, a free parking space? I'll give you a second. You got it? The answer is B. That 25% upfront payment is the number to remember. Okay, get ready to take some notes because the next few slides are all about key numbers you will absolutely see on your exams. First one up, 1,500 millimeters. This is the absolute minimum turning radius needed in a bathroom so a wheelchair user can turn around easily. This number is a huge deal for accessibility standards. Next number, 1 to 12. This is the steepest an accessibility ramp is allowed to be. So what does that actually mean? Well, for every 12 meters you go forward, the ramp can only go up by 1 meter. It's all about making sure that slope is gentle enough for someone in a wheelchair to handle safely. And our third key number, 1,200 millimeters. This is the maximum height for things like elevator buttons, light switches, and door handles. It's set right there so they're always within easy reach for someone in a wheelchair or anyone with limited reach. It's a perfect example of how smart design can create real independence. All right, let's see if you were paying attention. What's the minimum turning radius for a wheelchair in a bathroom? Is it 900, 1,200, 1,500, or 2,000 millimeters? The correct answer is, of course, C, 1,500 millimeters. Make sure you lock that number in. Now, being inclusive isn't just about accessibility. It's also about affordability, right? Especially for young people moving to big cities for work or school. And that's exactly where the Affordable Rental Housing, or ARH, scheme fits in. It's this clever hostel plus model that takes vacant government housing and turns it into rental complexes with shared facilities for students and migrants. So, who exactly is this ARH scheme designed for? Is it for permanent homeowners, farmers, government officials? Or is it for industrial workers, urban migrants, and students? Yep, the answer is B. This whole scheme is a direct answer to the housing crunch facing India's young, mobile urban population. Okay, let's switch gears. We've talked about people, now let's talk about the planet. This brings us to Section 3, Building for Every Climate. India's geography is just unbelievably diverse, and the new rules say our housing has to be just as smart and adaptive. Now, this slide is really interesting because it shows how the solutions are tailored to the environment.
For hilly areas with unstable slopes, you use lightweight steel frames. For coastal zones getting hit by cyclones, it's all about corrosion-resistant steel and raising homes up on stilts. And out in the hot, dry desert, buildings use thick walls and clever mutual shading to keep cool. It proves that one size definitely does not fit all. Okay, let's apply that. Say you're designing a home in a cold climate, like up in the Himalayas. How do you design it to soak up as much heat as possible? Would you use A, north-facing windows, B, small openings on the west, or C, face the main rooms toward the south and west? The right answer is C. By facing rooms to the south and west, you create a natural heat trap, which is just a super smart, low-tech way to stay warm. So, we've got homes that are inclusive and adapted to the climate. But are they safe? Are they strong? That's what our fourth section is all about, engineering resilient homes. Here, we're looking at some really cool tech from India's lighthouse projects that's being used to build homes that can actually stand up to natural disasters. A really key technology here is monolithic concrete. The best way to think about it is like this. Building with bricks is like stacking Legos one by one. Monolithic concrete is like pouring cake batter into a single pan. The whole structure is poured all at once, which creates a seamless building that's way more resistant to earthquakes, and that is absolutely critical for a city like Delhi, which is in a high-risk seismic zone. And the process itself is pretty simple. First, you assemble this precise aluminum mold, the formwork, on site. Second, you pour all the concrete in one single continuous go. And third, once it sets, boom, you have a solid, joint-free structure. This method isn't just way stronger, it's also a whole lot faster than building the old-fashioned way. Okay, final practice question. For a tall tower in an earthquake-prone area, which tech are you going to pick for speed and safety? The answer is clearly B. Monolithic concrete construction with aluminum formwork is the modern way to build strong, safe cities and to do it fast. Phew, we have covered a lot of ground. So let's move into our final section and just boil it all down to the absolute must-know essentials from this whole explainer. So let's just pull this all together. If you remember nothing else, remember these three pillars. The 2026 Housing Blueprint is all about inclusivity, making sure homes work for absolutely everyone. It's about adaptation, making sure our buildings fit their local climate. And it's about resilience, using modern engineering to keep people safe. And that's a wrap. These policies give us a really clear roadmap for 2026, but it does leave us with a much bigger question to think about. As India keeps urbanizing faster than ever, what's going to be the next huge challenge for housing? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer.